Hey everybody, welcome to the 411. Actually, the first ever edition of the 411 here at OpenPhone. Our goal with the 411 is to bring you information that you need in order to grow your small business. And today I'm really excited to bring in some experts in the field of AI, artificial intelligence. You've heard of ChatGPT. Brought everything to the mainstream almost a year ago, November 30th, 2022. And a lot has happened in the last year. So today we're going to demystify it. But before we begin, I need to let some people show up, give it some time. What I'll do is I'll ask you to say, if you're here in the chat, let us know where you're from, where you're dialing in from. And then if you want, let us know also, are you using AI right now? If not, what's holding you back? If you're using it and you feel like you're barely scratching the surface, let us know. Is there something that, you feel like's missing or something you're curious about? We'll put it in the chat, and our panel today will make sure that we cover it. So my name's Ronnie Higgins. I am the director of content here at OpenPhone. I'm calling in from San Francisco, California, where I have lived for just over 15 years. Before that, I hail from New Orleans, Louisiana, where I guess you probably have heard of it. It's where jazz was from, lots of good food, stuff like that. Let's see. We have Sierra, who is going to be in the comments with you all, is in Dallas, Texas. Of course, we're going to find out where our panelists are from when we bring them up in just a few minutes. I see Nikhil is in London. Philip in Austin, Texas. We've got Patty calling in from Pensacola, Florida. It's not a time to be in Pensacola, Florida. I think of the beach and the warm weather there, but right now it's probably freezing. Been there many a times, of course, because it's not that far from New Orleans. John, over in Chicago, where it's probably a lot colder than it is in Pensacola, Florida, and definitely a lot colder it is here in San Francisco, which if you haven't ever been to San Francisco and you come visit in the middle of summer, please bring a coat. If not, you're going to end up giving a lot of money to the people who sell you San Francisco sweaters in the tourist parts of town. I made that mistake the first time I came here. It was August, and I had shorts and T-shirts with me. And as soon as I walked out of the airport, realized I had made a very big mistake. Dorina, our founder, our OpenPhone founder here from San Francisco. Thank you, Dorina. Glad to see you here. This is going to be great. All right, just going to give it one more minute for everybody to come in, and then we'll get started. Looks like, let's see, we have... All right, I'm going to bring up our esteemed moderator, Craig Stoss, to the stage. Craig, so good to see you. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank
Ronnie.
you so much for being here. I'm excited today. I'm excited for you to help our audience understand and demystify this thing. And so I will let you take the stage and take over. And I just want to thank you again for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ronnie, and thanks for having me. OpenPhone. Hi, everyone. As Ronnie said, thanks for joining the very first The 411 webinar. And today we're going to talk a lot about demystifying AI and customer-facing work at small businesses. My name is Craig Stoss. I am the Director of CX Transformation at Partner Hero. My background for the past 20 years has been in the CX space. I have been customer-facing in just about as many customer-facing roles as you can imagine. And the last 10 to 12 years been leading support teams on a global basis. and the last several years focused really on CX transformation tooling and how we can bring not just AI tools, but now more recently AI tools into your space. I'm based just west of Toronto, Canada, in a town called Waterloo, made famous by the RIM and BlackBerry products, but certainly a nice tech hub here in Canada. And before I introduce our panelists, I just want to talk a little about today's topic. Over the past year, maybe a little bit year and a half, we have seen what I like to refer to as the democratization of AI. Prior to us getting here, AIs were expensive to build. They had to require a certain skill set from the market, and as far as development training and even education may be different and degrees. And it was largely inaccessible to small businesses. Because of all that, because of the cost to implement, small businesses and even medium businesses were left out because they couldn't afford the solutions. That is now changing. This past week, in fact, I was at a conference hosted by Ada on the conversational AI tool on AI, and one of the speakers was Rachel Woods, the CEO of the AI Exchange, and she talked in her keynote about the idea of how AI can help individuals now for as low as like $20 a month, which is relatively nothing compared to what it was a couple years ago. And it was really interesting to see how she talked about just learning about prompting and building AI systems on top of what's available to us now, such as ChatGPT. And so I really took that as the premise of what we're here to discuss is how do we take that, which just sounds like a few sentences of gibberish if you're not familiar with the space, and turn that into something that can transform your business. So without further ado, I would love to introduce David Armano. David is the
Did we just lose Craig?
Uh-oh. It's all good.
Murphy's Law. Look that
Right.
one up. Ask ChatGPT, pull that up, and ask ChatGPT what Murphy's Law is.
There he is.
I'm back. Chrome completely crashed on me. Can you hear me, David?
Yep.
I think I was just saying I'd like to introduce David Armano, the Executive Vice President of AI Strategy at Ringer Sciences. David, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Craig. That was quite the introduction. I just literally broke your computer.
I don't know what happened. Everything just went black. David, can I take a second to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so I actually just joined Ringer Science. We are an AI analytics firm, professional services firm. So what that means is that we really, like all analytics, it's essentially the art and science of analyzing data, extrapolating insights, and then helping informing programs, activations, communications for our clients. And we use the term AI analytics because increasingly AI tools, some that we use that are already built, some that we build ourselves, are a part of our process and how we do our work. So our philosophy is, in the short term, we talk about it as AI analytics, but longer term, few years from now, it's just going to be built into everything we do, and we won't even use that phrase. So recently joined, and I came from actually another AI company called Soul Machines that does AI avatars, autonomous AI avatars.
Very cool. Thank you so much. And our second guest on the webinar today is Reed Robinson, who is a lead AI product manager at Zapier. Reed, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hey everybody, Reed here. I do a lot of AI product strategy over here at Zapier, so I've had the pleasure of working on a number of our things. And for anybody not familiar, Zapier is a workflow automation platform. So if you're looking to, automate things like when you get messages from OpenPhone and you want to send those into, your CRM, a Google Sheet, whatever you want to do, being able to do all the cool things like that through Zapier. And we've got over 6,000 different applications on the platform. And so with us right now on AI strategy, we think a lot about not only how our users can incorporate LLMs into those workflows, such as building, we have integrations with ChatGPT that has become incredibly popular that users are putting into those sorts of workflows. We've also done a lot of things like I call under the hood AI that just makes it easier to understand what's possible and how to actually build those sorts of automations on Zapier. So yeah, excited to chat today. We work with thousands and thousands of small businesses and doing a lot of talks with customers on like what they're trying to do. So super passionate about helping people be able to build more with just the creativity that they have. So excited to be here today.
Very good. Thank you so much. Let's dive right in. I just introduced something that excites me about the new world we're in, which is that AI, in my opinion, has been democratized. It's now available to a wider group of people at a cheaper cost, with even more functionality, and that is what excites me a lot about this space. And I'll start in with David. What is the opportunity here for small business owners? What do you see as areas that they can absolutely latch onto and take as part of their organization?
Yeah, sure. So just to address the elephant in the room, Craig, and I know some discussions we were having about if let's say you're a small business owner uh, and you're hearing a lot about AI and Chat GPT, and you're seeing all these headlines, and every week there's a new thing. And then on top of that, there are literally now thousands of self-proclaimed AI experts out in the space that want you to subscribe to their or join their paid education program or whatever it is that they're selling. So uh, the thing about that is it's important to remember that this is a cycle that we see, and sometimes that cycle is legitimate and sometimes it's less so. So for example, we saw this cycle with NFTs, a little bit less legitimate there, but we also saw this cycle with things like social media and even e-commerce, where people came out and they offered to teach others how to do it. And now, social media is just a part of the marketing mix. We don't think about it. It's a part of how we build our businesses. We oftentimes don't even think about e-commerce. That's now ingrained into what we do. So um, we're at those early stages of AI, very early stages where, yes, there's lots of people out there with something to sell, but that doesn't mean that it's not a real digital transformation. So that's just kind of to set the foundation. And without taking up too much time, the thing I'll leave it at is the tools are out there. And really, if you're a small business owner, something that you may want to delegate to your team is to actually maybe go to a site like there's an AI for that and do some research, because there's so many applications that you actually can use to save time, or you do things differently for your business. But it really involves having people at your company sort of kick the tires and experiment.
Yeah, absolutely. Reed, I'd like to hear your take on the same question.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because I feel like at the beginning of the year, I was asked a lot of questions like, are businesses actually going to be using this, right? And people were really skeptical if this was just another kind of wave of technology. And to kind of give some, I don't know, perspective on my background, I actually left Zapier because I had done a hackathon in the world of NFTs and then launched a business in that space. And then we sold that business. But it's actually that world that introduced me to generative AI through AI generated art, because I just became so fascinated in it. So what I'm trying to say there is I've got to live through understanding one, it's called hype cycle, and seeing through like what is just talk and what is actually feasible tech that people want to use. And early this year, I think there was a lot of more skepticism than I'm feeling today. I think a lot more people were like, are businesses really going to use ChatGPT? Like, is there real applications here? And, from our perspective, we launched our, ChatGPT and OpenAI apps on Zapier, which allowed for like completions and chats to happen like asynchronously. So I often say it's like running ChatGPT in your sleep. And those quickly became like overall our AI category became the fastest growing apps on our platform ever. Like in terms of what was actually used and what people were spending money to use, in that became like outpaced. If everybody remembers when like everyone was super pumped about Notion having an API, right? Those AI apps like rapidly outpaced even the adoption of something like Notion, which was like a very known long-term used tool for businesses. So we're definitely seeing like material adoption that people are finding value from, which is really cool to see for that. And I think the thing I get most excited about is just like continuously thinking about how people go from having an idea to, where they used to say like, oh, I can't do that, I don't know how to do that, or I don't have capacity on my, to be able to do something like that, to now being able to say like, oh, like maybe I can actually build something that might help me do this, is really cool. I think that power to give every business owner, every business operator the ability to like build in a way that they never previously thought was possible is becoming more and more possible every day.
Yeah, David outright said it, and you really alluded to it, Reed, that there are just so many applications, so many options, so much you can do. A phrase I heard several times recently is this idea of you need to stop asking what AI could do for me and start saying what problems do I have that AI can solve, and just that slight different way of framing it. So with that, what are the first steps to understanding how AI can help? Reed, do you have an opinion on how small businesses can start down that path?
Yeah. So I think the first thing, I'll start at like the easiest, right? I think just learn, like, it sounds so silly to say this, right? But just learn how to use ChatGPT before you get like too wild with what you're doing with AI. I think ChatGPT is, grew to the massive amount of users they have because it is genuinely an incredible piece of technology that is easy to use. And I think if you learn how to use that in a business application, I think most users I've talked to, they start with like simpler things, like they're doing it for like children's bedtime stories, and they're doing it for all sorts of things. But over time, ChatGPT has released more and more capabilities that I think are valuable for people working within a business. Like the newest, GPTs, for instance, can really help you design assistants that can help you ideate for all sorts of tasks, help you summarize information, help you propose responses for customer complaints or customer emails. If you're looking to start like blog content, we see a lot of these users helping it for not only ideating ideas on what content your business with your business focus should be producing, but also then helping you do like initial drafts. And I'll be clear, like I wouldn't say to publish that draft right away. I think most of the time what we see from talking to users is they get an output from ChatGPT for something like a draft piece of content, and they then say like, oh, that's actually really bad. Like it didn't do it right, but I have other thoughts, and it like really is helpful for that like ideation Kickstarter for that, and helping you have a better sense of what you can do. It's also a pretty decent proofreader. If you don't have access to one, right, you can give it through and be like, hey, can you give me ideas on how to make a stronger call to action for my business for this blog post, or give me some catchy ideas for titles, right? Thinking about ways that you might be able to interact with ChatGPT that'll really just help you do some of the tasks you previously struggled to do. And then I could talk later about getting all the ways into like, how do you then run that in your sleep? But I think really the place to start is the simplest place, which I would consider ChatGPT today, getting familiar with that, seeing what people are doing, and trying to find use cases that feel valuable for you and your business.
Is there a distinction, David, between like a creative use of AI for, say, marketing type work versus more strategic, like automating your business in some way? Do you see opportunities on both sides, or is one more important today?
No, I think you've outlined, so automation and generation, those are the two, right? Those are two biggies. Those are two sort of pillars of AI, and they're massive worlds, and each has their different use cases, and I think they're equally important. So, for example, again, I'm going to try to look at everything through the context of a small business. Let's say you want to start a small business, okay, and you need to create a brand identity. There's been a traditional way that we used to approach that, from working with maybe a design firm, to then having options like Fiverr available, like just kind of casting a very wide net, to now there are definitely applications where you can have generated logos, essentially, right? So that's a new wave. So that's in the generative space, right? So you're starting a business, you now have that as an option. It may or may not, depending on your need, it may or may not be a viable option. But I'm just giving one specific example. in the generative space. And then on the automation side, they're very different use cases. For example, something that you can now do with ChatGPT is upload spreadsheets, and it'll spit out all different kind of visualizations of data. So that's relative to what we do. So if you're in a business that has a lot of spreadsheet data and you want to present it in a number of different ways, and you want to streamline how you go from data to graphs, or maybe like see a number of different graphs, or be able to do it in a different way, or maybe you don't have to be a spreadsheet expert, which is really key. That is on the sort of automation side. You're now basically creating automation to get from data to graph, and you're automating parts of that process. So they're equally valuable. They're very different. I think it's a good way to look at each of them and how they have. I just gave two specific examples, right? And this is the level that you as a business owner need to decide if you want to get to or not. Do you want to make the investment to understand the 20 or 30 use cases that could be beneficial to your business?
Something that I've started to play with a bit in the partner hero context, and as part of my work, is this idea of creating these smart conversational bots that just know a topic really well, or know a company really well. So you can go to a company website, instead of having to figure out how their menus work and drop down resources, literally being able to ask a bot, hey, what's the, what was the start of, when was your company founded, or what's your pricing model, or and the bot starts to talk about it. Those types of things I think are really interesting in the small business space, because people don't know your business. We know the bigger companies in the world, and at least through their marketing and through the terminology they use. Where do you think, between generative and automated, I like the way you frame it. Where do you think a company should start if they're looking to, we're talking a little bit about customer experience here, or at least that's the customer facing piece of the title. Where do you think they should start from the customer facing standpoint? Is it on that, website automation, or is there something in house they should do?
Is this for Reed or?
Yeah, go ahead, David. Continue on your thought.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you brought up that use case, Reed, because Craig, because you've just landed on something that I think is massive, and it's going to sound like a big idea, but it's actually super pragmatic. So the firm that I joined, we are building enterprise grade large language models. I call them conversational experiences, right? So you're in the CX space. And I was kicking the tires on one that we had built, and I had the company's website. It was built on a company's data, on secure databases, et cetera. And I had the website in the background, because as I was kicking the tires, I needed to get smart on the company. And then I just, not even a quarter of the way through, I realized I switched from looking at the website to just prompting all my questions about the company. What are your best-selling products? Tell me about what is your ESG policy? And we had uploaded all the data, so it had all the answers. It was just a better experience. I got the information I was looking for very rapidly. I didn't have to search through tabs, think about where would they have this information. I didn't have to look at LinkedIn versus the website, which might have different information. It was everything in one place. So there's the highlight there is that there's not only opportunity on the sort of, you're running a business and you want to do something that's going to be for the customer benefit, but there's also things what we were doing is actually for an internal team, for a communications team, so they could get the information quickly. But there's an employee experience as well. You can actually have tools that you're building that will help your employees do their jobs more efficiently.
Reed, I'm going to let you take a stab at that same question, because I'd like to see. I love your phrase. Have AI run your business while you sleep. I love that concept. Where does that plug into the customer facing side easily?
Yeah, it definitely does on both sides. I mean, one, we've done a lot of use cases for internal enablement, I would say. Like support is a great example, right? You might have, if you have a team working with you trying to support your customers, building a custom GPT. Zapier has an interfaces product that does something similar, where you can kind of give it your documentation, you can give it your website, you can give it all sorts of information. And you don't necessarily need to expose that to the customer. Let's say you're worried about exposing that, but maybe you just use that as a way to help the others in your business learn like what your business does and help answer customer inquiries, or maybe like format their responses in a way that's more like aligned with your company voice that you want to communicate with customers. Lots of really useful tools that you can just be building for, honestly, just yourself or for the rest of your team is definitely one of them. I think that's one of the coolest things with, ChatGPT's latest release of custom GPTs is you could just say like, hey, here's information about my business. I would like you to help me reply to these sorts of inquiries. I've attached a document of like all the SKUs that my company sells, right? And then all of a sudden you now have a customized one for your business, for your products that can help you reply to things. And again, you can use that yourself. You don't need to expose that. When it comes to customer facing stuff, there's a lot, like you can embed a lot of those like technology. That's what we've been seeing a lot of with our interfaces product. We've seen a ton of customers kind of building those sorts of chatbot experiences that they're embedding on their websites so that visitors can now have like a chat-based experience that they want, whether it be for support or whether it be for like discovery or just, I don't know, like I even saw one the other day in the technical world of API documentation where they had left a link to a chatbot to discuss like building the integration in Python, right? Like they had a specifically like trained one that was all about Python. So if you're a developer coming along and you want to do something with Python, you could just click into that and talk about it, and it'll help you with the documentation and writing the code. Same thing applies to a business. Let's say you're doing one that does like, I don't know, travel experiences, right? You can start to give it a lot of information that you can then expose. So really cool things there. The other thing we're seeing a lot of is also just helping do draft replies, right? Again, you take that same concept, right, of you giving this GPT access to knowledge and access to your voice. You can now help it do like draft replies to reviews, right? Your Google reviews. You can have it potentially give you great example replies that you could do. So you could just be like, yep, that one's great, send it out. Or you can do ones that are doing that for your emails that you're getting or in your support ticketing tool. Lots of different opportunities there to do more things that are actually going to like reach your customers.
I'm gonna pivot a little bit slightly now, because something that all three of us have said over the course of this conversation so far is about just give it the data, just upload the data, just send the data to some AI. And I think that the three of us, being in this industry and working with these tools, probably we all know that it's not just quote unquote as easy as give it the data. What are some of the challenges in both the data and maybe not just the data that businesses will face as they're going down this journey, David?
Yeah, I mean, so again, in the small business context, there are going to be trust issues.
Yeah.
And they're understandable. It's something that Chat GPT, when we talk to our clients, right, that's great for experimentations, but we wouldn't trust that your company data necessarily with that. Now, small business, depending on the size of your business and sort of the security issues that you need to think about, it really is a case by case business. But I do think trust plays a factor. But with each passing day, we get closer to more and more sustainable enterprise solutions. Now, the thing about enterprise is that's a bit more geared towards the large business space. But I probably within the next few months or so, we'll start to see some SMB solutions that are more, upping the security, giving you more of that peace of mind for an SMB market. That has to be coming. So I think trust is one thing. For sure, with large language models, especially, hallucinations and accuracy are still an issue. It's getting better every day. But the thing is, so something that we talk a lot about is, it's an old notion, but having humans in the loop. And even when you're using large language models, so for example, if you're using it for a small business and it's a great thought partner, you can say, I'm thinking you can basically prompt it, say, we're going to offer a new product to this market, and we want to market to Gen Z. What are some things that we need to be thinking about? You'll actually get some good things back, but it's almost like having a conversation with your intern, right? It's not going to be at an executive level function, but a large language model can be a great thought partner to both save time and also help you think about things that are kind of obvious that you just need a trigger to help you think through. So you have to have that context as well when you're thinking about not just the data that you share with it, but the prompts. Again, this is more in the large language model space. Um, as far as some of the other generative tools, I think some of the big issues to keep an eye on are what are the legal ramifications? If you're using some of the visual tools, what could you be held liable for? OpenAI just said that they're going to support if people are pursued legally, and then I think it was Anthropic. I was like, nope, you're on your own. So you just need to sort of get familiar with some of the tools where you might be doing visuals or potentially even video. What are the risks that are associated with that?
Yeah, absolutely spot on. Reed, I'm gonna frame the question a bit differently, given your employer. I've created Zaps before, and I think with any type of integration or anything that involves natural language, um, there's always these error cases, these edge cases. There's language cases, accents or double byte characters, as some some regions and cultures. Um, how how do small businesses start to think about using AI and the challenges that might come up in that idea of, well, now anyone can talk to me in any language I want, versus maybe an older model of an IVR being like, press one for this and press two for that, and it's very binary, and you either pressed one or you didn't. How do you think they attack that?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, first off, I've recognized that like without the use of an LLM in there, the business really wouldn't have that interaction. Quite simply, like yeah, you can use Google Translate, but I'm sure everyone's been on the other end of like a Google Translate gone wrong, right? So that's the first. I'd say the other thing I'd recommend is just like be transparent. Like it really helps if you're like, hey, I don't speak your language. I'm using ChatGPT to like speak to you. Like I translated your thing, right? Like I think that'll really help. Um, you know, David talked a lot about hallucinations and some of the inherent risks there of using these models. And I think that's an extremely important thing to keep in mind. But I also think that's then if you're trying to do something like that where you truly don't understand the inputs or the outputs of what you're doing in the sense of like a translation, add some clarification there that you're like, this was generated by ChatGPT. I think would help. First off. But I mean, yeah, I think the biggest thing I think about from a business perspective is like the fact that wasn't possible before and now it is, right? Like in a very open phone way, you could now be, grabbing your messages and potentially helping reply to those messages in the language that the user wrote in on without having to ask them what language they spoke or anything, right? You can create full automations that connect with models that help you do that, which is pretty cool. The other thing I'll say is I talked a lot about before, and a critical piece, which is understand which workflows you're acceptable to use with generative AI and which ones you really can't risk it, right? Like you do want to be a little bit conscious of the inherent risks that can happen here of it getting something completely wrong. And that's why I talk a lot about like draft states, right? Like getting something into a draft state versus something that reaches a user directly. Think about what part of your process you're comfortable automating on both those things. And if it is a draft state, then how are you kind of getting that workflow going versus something that you're just like, you're letting run in your sleep and go. But for me, it's like things like, if it's just adding it to my Gmail drafts, if it's adding it to my Evernote, if it's adding my to-do list items for the team, then it's like, if it goes awry, not the worst case scenario. But if I were doing that for like my order confirmation emails as an e-commerce platform, and it like made up a SKU, for instance, that's probably not the best case scenario of what you want to be doing.
Yeah. My team at Partner Hero does a lot of conversational design, bot design for our clients, and as a rule of thumb, we always let something soak for at least a minimum of 7 days, where it's only tagging and replying internally, and allowing us to then look at it and say, like, was this reply acceptable? Was it accurate? Was it relevant? Was it contextual? We're able to look at that, and that would be our minimum before we ever recommended one of our clients to go live with a conversational AI. One more thought in this kind of challenges space, and I know David touched on it right. I think in it almost his first comment was this idea of snake oil. Right there is a lot, with the hype cycle. There are a lot of people looking to just make some quick money, and they're putting maybe a thin veneer on a ChatGPT or on one of these other models and it's not really doing anything special. It's not gonna provide a lot of value, and that's a concern of mine, if I'm honest, because I think that these things are so important and so tunable. And I can't tell you how many demos I've seen in the past quarter where people say, "Oh, this tool just works out of the box," and I always kind of roll my eyes a bit because I think we could all admit that AI, at least not yet, doesn't work out of the box. There's always some training or some tweaking that needs to be done. So David, just to expand on that, like, what do you think are the key things to look for if I'm a small business owner and want to start finding tools that I can use to help automate my business or my customer experiences? What are some of the key things I need to talk to my prospective vendors about?
I think when it comes to tools, like I mentioned, there's AI for that, right? As one of several kind of aggregators. First of all, we're in the phase, like many phases of sort of early stage digital transformation, where there's tons of players and there will be consolidation. Okay, so I think if you want to play it safe, you do have to spend a little bit of time researching, and the bigger names emerge. Like, for example, let's say you're running a business, you want to streamline your video operations, okay, and you've heard that you can actually use AI actors. Like, there are some bigger players. There's Runway for video generation. There's Synthesia for avatars, right? Like, these are the bigger names, okay? With just a little bit of research, you'll figure out who are the more established players. I think you got Google funding Synthesia. There, you'll see who's raising the rounds. That's a safer bet. Those products are further along. I keep saying, like, look, at some point, Runway is just going to be its own thing, or Adobe's going to be forced to buy them, and right, and we're going to see that happen. So I think if you want to play it safe, figure out who some of the bigger, more established names are. That doesn't mean they're the best. It just means that the other ones are, you have to sort of dig deeper to find those gems. So I think that's a good starting point. And it does make sense, like find the credible voices on LinkedIn. I think they typically are the people who either are working in the field. There's some great, like Ethan Malik, I think he's in academia. He's a great resource. The ones where their business model is training people up on AI, or they have a course, like, that's where I'd be mindful that you may not get the value that you're looking for, because that's their product and that's what they're selling, and that may not be the best use of your time.
No, that's a great answer. Well reasoned, and I agree with you. I think that there are some difficult questions that, when you're buying a telephone system, Air Call, Ring Central, Dial Pad, they all just provide. They provide. I should say just, because it's not, that's OpenPhone, whatever. They all provide phone services, and they just do it in their own flavor, into their own ICP. AI tools, I think, are a lot different than that, right? AI tools, they overlap each other a lot more. They do new things. They do things in a unique way. I mean, even conversational AI tools, I find, have completely different back end models of how they classify tickets, and it's a lot more complex than that. And so I think you're right. Asking a lot of questions, looking for longer standing companies, reputable companies, listening to thought leaders, etc. As we kind of enter the last segment here, I want to switch gears a little bit to um, uh, to maybe talk a little bit more the customer facing piece head on, or for that matter, the way businesses should enact the customer facing piece. So, for example, should businesses have a policy in AI, or should their employees just be free to use it however they see fit? So, Reed, let's start with you. Do you think it's important for companies to experiment and to let their employees do whatever they want, or is there need for policies and regulation?
Yeah. Obviously, it's going to vary per business. I think probably the number one thing to keep in mind is, the different policies with these different tools. I know it gets really annoyingly complicated, and I wish it wasn't. So, but for instance, ChatGPT, like if you're using the free version or even the plus version with your history not turned off, I believe they're going to train on all that data. That probably is not what you want to use for like your customer data. So be very conscious of that. There are ways you can like turn history off. ChatGPT Enterprise is probably not in the realm of conversation for most folks listening here, but it does like eliminate that training side of things. But yeah, absolutely, businesses should be thinking about what their policies are for this. I think there's a lane where you should establish what's like in scope for testing versus what is not, right? Like for probably the earliest thing you're going to want to do is like customer data and things you would consider IP, right? Your intellectual property that you don't want leaking, right? If you don't want something leaking onto the web, that probably should be out of scope for your testing unless you understand how to like disable training for the data you're sharing with something like ChatGPT. I will say if you do use any of these tools via the API, or it's not any of these tools, with OpenAI's models via the API methods, that does eliminate it from training on your data. They have a very, very, very clear position on that. It's one of the reasons we do see a lot of users setting up their like versions of ChatGPT through Zapier, is because they want to be using it through the API method and not the ChatGPT UI for some of their more sensitive data. So that's probably the number one consideration, particularly as a small business, I would think, is just like, think about what your intellectual property you want to share and customer data you don't want to share. Probably the first two things you want to think about, and then you can expand from there.
David, kind of taking off of what Reed just said. So you're putting data into this thing, you're collecting data, asking questions about it. You're obviously in the analytics side of all of this. Um, where do analytics come into this? Can you trust the analytics of AI? Do you need to do something to make sure that your analytics, then your customer business decisions, customer facing or business decisions in general are sound?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a today and tomorrow answer to that question. So today, absolutely. So we are already both using tools, if not creating custom tools, to do things like automate tagging of data. So like to tag our data. That is a manual process, time intensive, people intensive traditionally. And so it's the automation of a process, right? A lot of what Reed has been talking about kind of fits in that category. So that can be done today. We're doing more and more of that. Tomorrow, meaning like in the not so distant future, there's likely to be more AI involvement in extracting meaning from data. Right now, we need people for that. We need humans in the loop. Humans are still the best. I like to talk about this as intelligent automation. So it's actually like you have that collaboration between human and AI. But that being said, in the not so distant future, with now the generative AI genie sort of open, I do believe that the synthesis of data and extracting insight from it, AI is going to increasingly play a role. It's moving in that direction. So that's how I look at it. That ultimately, like today is the what processes of organizing, tagging, structuring data can be automated. Lots of tools that exist today. They're only going to get better. Tomorrow, then the question becomes, okay, how do we answer the so what, or now what do we do, right? Which is actually you have to glean insights. You have to sort of synthesize and extract intelligence from that data, and that's a human-dominated part. But I think increasingly there'll be AI as a collaborator on that side of the house as well.
And with all of this, I mean, we've talked a lot about the various types of ways you can use it, love the distinction between automation versus generative. I've never really classified that in my head that way. Um, I mean, what does success look like here? What are the things that a small business needs to look at to make sure that their investment is actually paying off for them? What does that look like? I want to open it to both of you, so jump in as you see fit.
I mean, probably number one thing I'd say is efficiency, right? Like if you feel that it's helping you be more efficient, if you can quantify that, great. I always know that's a fun exercise. So I won't, if you're a small business out there not being able to quantify exactly, you probably know your business though. Like one of the nice things in talking to small business operators and owners is like, you know your business pretty well. You're going to know if a system is working for you and making you more efficient and your team more efficient. So I'd say that's probably the number one thing I would look for to start, right? Like again, we've talked about there's ways you can get a lot more complex. You can put it in a lot more places that you're probably then going to want to do like some more rigorous evaluation with. But I think at the very beginning, when you're just starting out here, are you able to build out like examples, chatbots, whatever you want to do in those earlier stages that make you feel more efficient to do the things that you want to be more efficient doing? That would probably be like the direction I would say to think about.
Yeah, I that's a huge one. I actually think it's a lot of the traditional KPIs that you look at, and so some of those things are going to be quality of output again, especially if you're using the generative as opposed to the if you're thinking about generating versus automating. Generating is always going to create output, right? So what was the quality of this graph that I got from the analysis of an LLM? What was the quality of this video that I created with a avatar that speaks 5 languages? And then how much money did I save because I didn't use a studio to actually do a shoot of me, and maybe I cloned myself and I got an avatar that is we're expanding into the Italian market. So I have an avatar that can speak Italian, and then how much did that save me and how much scale does that give my business? So it's a lot of the traditional KPIs, but I think you do have to look at comparisons. Like we did X, what was the quality of X versus the way we used to do it? Was it more efficient? Did we get to better output? Even if the outcome is just as good, but you did it faster and cheaper, that's significant, right? So it's a lot of your traditional KPIs, but you have to sort of benchmark and look back at how you used to do that process or create that asset.
Okay, before I hand it off to Ronnie, one last question for both of you. I'm a small business owner. I want to be more effective at my business. I want to get my efficiencies up and I think AI is the solution. What's some advice? What's some advice that you would give? And David, feel free to kick us off.
Small business context, I think, if not you, who is the person within your small business that can get their hands dirty, do the experimentation, carve out a little bit of time in their week, be your go-to, right? If you're the business owner and you don't have time for that. Now, if you're the business owner and you're super hands-on and it's, you've got 5 people in your business, that might be you. Maybe that is you. And if it's not you, who else is it? Someone, and use the past. Think about, I really think social media, that was something that 12 plus years I helped companies navigate early on. And I see the parallels are very similar. And it affected small business, it affected large business. And ultimately, again, fast forward to today, it's just a part of your marketing communications mix. There are some businesses that are built off of social media. There are people that have built their entire business off of just being on TikTok. And we can say that we can talk about that's good or bad, but it is what it is. So I think look at those, think back to those early years when your small business had to figure out social media. How did you do it? And AI is similar, different technology, but similar in the sense that you'll need to do some of the same kinds of exercises.
Great answer. Yeah, I think the other thing I'd say, like I tell this to a lot of people when they're just getting into the world of generative AI and ChatGPT and stuff, is like, just try to be creative. I know it sounds really weird, but like playing with this technology you need to be in the mindset that you'd almost be in when you're like doing a painting. right? To get the right sort of flow going, the right sort of prompt going, you sometimes need just to be in a little bit of a creative headspace to play around with. Because it's not, one of the biggest things to understand is this is not designing computer software where every time you give it the same input, it's going to give you a predictable output. This is going to give you different things each time. You're never guaranteed with AI to get the same output, and at least in the current state. And so to do that, and the way you interact with it is very different than the way you're normally used to interacting with computer software or computer tools in general. And it needs you to be a little bit creative, like the whole space of prompt engineering and stuff, and just how you want to incorporate this technology into your business. It needs a little bit of creativity. So because it really kind of breaks down what you previously thought may have been possible for you to do in your business. It may have break down what you thought was possible for any business like yours to do. And you really need to see some of those like, light bulb moments, kind of like break down a little bit of like how you normally think about interacting with technology and try some weird stuff. It's weird advice, but it's probably the most common piece I give to people who are just getting started.
Absolutely love it. I just want to say thanks to David and Reed. This was a really excellent conversation, and thank you to OpenPhone and Ronnie for having me here as well. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Ronnie.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. There's so many valuable pieces of information. David, ending on that apt analogy of remember social media when everybody was like trying to figure it out? Like now it just feels like such a given. Like, and this is literally going to be a given in a few years. And so we just need to rip the Band-Aid off. Like I said in the comments earlier, just 30 minutes a week. 30 minutes a week. I know it's hard to find that 30 minutes. Maybe give up one show that you're watching on Netflix or something, like, or
for the price of a cup of coffee.
Right? So like just 30 minutes. Like download the ChatGPT app to your phone, like while you're in line somewhere or you're stuck in traffic. Like maybe not while you're stuck in traffic because you're not supposed to play with your phone while driving. But what I'm saying is find the time to just play around and do what Reed said. Like treat it like a piece of art. Like anybody who's an artist, like the analogy there is also perfect because when you start drawing or painting, you're not Bob Ross, you're not Michelangelo. Like you're pretty close to like a kindergartner or someone like our kids in daycare. Like it's not the most perfect thing, but over time you'll start to realize like, oh, this is the way I should word the things that I need this chatbot or AI to give me. So just lots of great information here. Can't wait to unpack it for you. And, thank you also too for everyone here that is watching. If you're watching the recording, thank you. If you're watching the live, just look out for the recording and the recap and takeaways on the OpenPhone blog next week. Speaking of OpenPhone, in the meantime, if you want to begin taking advantage of AI without needing to spend time to learn a new tool, OpenPhone offers AI tools like call summaries and AI suggested text message responses. We also integrate with Zapier. So if you want to take advantage of some of the things that Reed here said today to help you in your business communicate more efficiently with customers. And last but not least, next time on the 411, using customer feedback loops to grow bigger in 2024 at a time when costs are rising and customer expectations are sky high. Small business owners need to build effective feedback loops to stay ahead of competitors and volatile marketing conditions. On the next edition of this series, we will help small business owners like you understand the crucial role customer feedback loops play in their growth. So make sure to tune in December 12th, 9 a.m. Thank you so much, everybody. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.